Hello, 6th grade language arts students. Today I am going to be reading out loud to you the story that we're going to be reading together for this section in language arts. It's called Garrett A. Morgan by Garrett Tilly Turner, and it is what's called a biographical sketch. A biographical sketch is like a biography but shorter. It includes some details, but not all of the details of the person's whole life. And I love this one. One of my favorite things to read about is how different things were invented. And I also like to read about how people overcome challenges in their lives. And so two of my favorite things to read about are combined in this story, and I think you'll enjoy it too. Everyone who has ever crossed a street safely with the help of a traffic light can thank Garrett A. Morgan. He is the inventor who thought of a way for people and cars to take turns crossing at intersections. Garrett A. Morgan was born in Paris, Kentucky on March 4, 1877. His parents, Sidney and Elizabeth Reed Morgan, had 10 other children. Times were hard, and at age 14, Morgan struck out on his own, heading for nearby Cincinnati, Ohio. He found a job as a handyman. 4 years later, he moved to Cleveland, Ohio. He arrived with only a quarter to his name, but he had a talent for fixing mechanical things and for saving his money. He got a job as a sewing machine adjuster at the Roots and McBride Company. Before long, he had thought of an idea. It was a belt fastener for sewing machines. Garrett Morgan soon saved enough money to buy his own sewing machine business and purchase a home. His father had died by that time, and he invited his mother to move to Cleveland. A year later, he married Mary Ann Hassick. They enjoyed a long, happy marriage and were the parents of 3 sons. Morgan was a good businessman. Before long, he was able to open a tailoring shop in which he hired 32 employees. His shop made suits, dresses, and coats with sewing equipment that he had built. Although planning was important to his success, his next business venture came about by accident. He was trying to find a liquid chemical that he could use to polish sewing machines. While he was experimenting, his wife called him to dinner. Hurriedly, he wiped his hands on a pony fur cloth on his workbench, and the wiry fur hairs straightened out. Curious to see how this liquid would affect other kinds of hair, he tried it on the Airedale dog next door. The dog's hair got so straight that his owner hardly recognized him. After a bit more experimenting, Morgan put the chemical on the market as a product to straighten hair. His next invention was a safety hood or breathing device. In more recent years, it has been called a gas mask. Morgan received a patent for it, U.S. patent number 1,113,675, and as he stated, the object of the invention is to provide a portable attachment which will enable a fireman to enter a house filled with thick, suffocating gases and smoke, and to breathe freely for some time therein, and thereby enable him to perform his duties of saving life and valuables without danger to himself from suffocation. And if you look on page 206 in your book, you can see the diagram of Morgan's invention. The safety hood won a first prize gold medal from the International Exposition for Sanitation and Safety. The judges at the exposition immediately recognized its value. Morgan wanted to market his invention, but he believed prejudice would limit his sales if his racial identity was generally known. He knew that some fire departments would rather endanger their firemen's lives than do business with a black inventor. He attempted to solve this problem in a most unusual way. He formed the National Safety Device Company. He was the only non-white officer. The other officers, one of whom had been the director of public works for the city of Cleveland, would arrange for demonstrations of the device and set up a canvas tent in the demonstration area. They would set a fire in the tent with an awful smelling fuel made of tar, sulfur, formaldehyde, and manure. Once the fire was roaring, Morgan would appear disguised as an Indian chief. He'd put on the gas mask and go in and remain up to 20 minutes while he extinguished the flames. He would come out as good as new. This might have gone on indefinitely, but the night of July 25th, 1916 changed everything. Morgan became a hero overnight. That night, there was a violent explosion at the Cleveland Waterworks. Approximately 30 workmen were trapped in a tunnel 5 miles out and more than 225 feet beneath Lake Erie. Smoke, natural gases, and debris kept the would-be rescuers from entering the tunnel where the workmen were trapped. Family and friends didn't know whether anyone had survived the blast. Finally, someone at the site of this disaster remembered that Garrett Morgan had invented a gas mask. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning when Morgan was called in. He, his brother Frank, and 2 volunteers put on gas masks and entered the tunnel. They were able to save the surviving workmen, including the superintendent, whom Morgan revived with artificial respiration. Newspaper wire services picked up the story. The account of Morgan's heroism appeared in papers across the country. This turned out to be a mixed blessing. The city of Cleveland awarded Morgan a diamond-studded gold medal for heroism. Safety hoods or gas masks were ordered by the U.S. government. Many American, English, and German veterans of World War I owe their lives to the gas masks. Chemists, engineers, and other people working with noxious fumes could work more safely. At first, many fire departments ordered gas masks for use in their work, but because of racial prejudice, the number of orders dwindled, and some orders were canceled when it became known that Morgan was a black man. Meanwhile, Thomas A. Farrell, Cleveland's director of public utilities, wrote to the Carnegie Hero Fund Commission to inform them of Morgan's heroic deed. The commission had been endowed by Andrew Carnegie to reward people who had shown great heroism. Instead of awarding Garrett Morgan, the commission gave the Hero Medal to the project superintendent whose life Morgan had saved. People who knew that Morgan deserved this honor realized this was very unfair. Instead of being discouraged, Garrett Morgan went back to his drawing board. Without the disappointment of the gas mask, he might never have developed his next invention, the stoplight. While the gas mask saved the lives of people who did dangerous work, the traffic light has saved lives of drivers and pedestrians of all ages all across the world. Reportedly, Morgan was the first black person in Cleveland to own a car. As the number of cars increased, there was a need for an effective way to control the flow of traffic. Intersections were especially dangerous. Morgan put his problem-solving skills to work and invented the 3-way automatic electric stoplight. It didn't look like today's stoplight, but it provided the concept on which modern stoplights are based. For some time, railroads had used a semaphore or signaling system. Trained engineers could look straight down the track and tell from the position of the semaphore whether to stop or proceed. Since city streets intersect, Morgan had to come up with a way to signal drivers on side streets as well as main thoroughfares. He received his patent, U.S. patent number 1,475,024, on November 20th, 1923. At first, Morgan marketed the invention himself, but then decided to sell the rights to the General Electric Company for $40,000. He not only had quite a lot more money than he had when he arrived in Cleveland, he had made 2 gigantic contributions to public safety. Even though Garrett Morgan's contributions made life easier for everyone, regardless of race, he had been the victim of racism. Believing that no one should be denied opportunities because of their race, he worked to try to keep other people from having the kind of experiences he had had. He went about solving this problem in several different ways. He was concerned that the local newspapers didn't contain much news about the black community and things that were being accomplished there, so he started the Cleveland Call newspaper. It is now known as the Call and Post and has a large circulation. He was active in civil rights organizations, and feeling that black citizens were not properly represented in local government, he ran for city council. Although he did not win that election, Cleveland later became the first large American city to elect a black man as mayor. For the last 20 years of his life, Morgan suffered from glaucoma. This resulted in near blindness, but it didn't slow down his sharp mind. Although he had hoped to attend the Emancipation Centennial to be held in Chicago in August 1963, Garrett Morgan died less than a month before that event. But he had lived to receive a well-deserved honor. 6 months before his death, he was cited by the United States government for having invented the first traffic signal.